Live tonight from the virtual Talladega Super Speedway, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to race number 2 on the round of 12 for these 2021 SimSeats Real Sim Racing Cup Series playoffs. And as always, we're happy that it is you and us here on a Monday night, along with our producer Hugo Luis and Nolan Rempel. My name is Evan Pasoko, and Nolan, we opened up this round of 12 just 1 week ago. It was a big race win for Daniel Eberhardt at Las Vegas to lock himself in to the round of 8. Now everybody else gets to sweat it out at Talladega, where really anything can happen.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Talladega, it's one of those tracks where teamwork is certainly the name of the game coming into this thing, especially with this new track package. You are going to need a lot of people that are going to be willing to work together. So you best hope you didn't make any enemies last week, but you're going to have one heck of a time trying to go for a race win tonight.
This is a place where you want friends, and again, we really don't know what we're going to see with this package. Strength and numbers could be a race that's decided on strategy and the execution of green flag pit stops like we saw last Tuesday in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series. Of course, we look at the championship points coming into this evening, and again, Daniel Eberhardt with a race win is in. That is big news for him, Nolan, notably because Daniel Eberhardt is not in the field here this afternoon. He is out sick, and we hope that he gets better soon and will be able to compete by the time we get to Texas. But it's those drivers on the bubble, right? Matt Danson is the bubble driver, only 4 points ahead of Bowie, then Lariah, Nieto, and even Rabel at the very bottom at minus 11 points is still well within striking distance. Nobody really safe at a racetrack where you can lose a dozen spots at a corner or see your championship hopes fall apart if you're in somebody else's mess.
Especially since you have a 42-car grid here at Talladega. It's one of those things where the smallest mistake from one person up in front who might not even be racing for the championship, that could see you finish in the bottom 5 cars on the grid because of the damage, or it might be so bad you might be forced to retire. And that, of course, cripples your run coming into the Charlotte Roval. And it's going to be such a crucial race today, and I have a feeling a lot of the guys that are in the playoffs, they might not even be focusing on trying to get a win tonight. They might just more be focusing on trying to see if they can just survive the race.
And of course, if you are not a fan of road courses, tonight is a big night for you because this round of 12 will conclude next Monday night when we head back to the Charlotte Motor Speedway, this time to the Charlotte Motor Speedway Roval. At that point, we will eliminate our 12-car field down to 8. So, if you're not a fan of the Roval and you know you're going to be a mid-pack car, you may be a little bit more aggressive tonight, needing to build a points cushion heading into that race. Other drivers may have the opposite opinion, Nolan. They may be comfortable headed into a race at the Roval and simply just want to get out of this one okay, knowing that they'll probably get decent points next week. The Roval's always a thrilling road course race. We're looking forward to that one, but I think drivers' individual kind of inputs and preferences on how they feel that race is going to stack up for them personally may have a big effect on how they attack this race here tonight.
And I think one of those drivers that might be looking to lay back a little bit here at Talladega is actually going to be Matt Danson. He's one of those guys who is a road course ringer. He has won every single road course that he has raced so far this season. Would have won all of the road courses this season, I would imagine, thus far, had he not had that one race suspension. So Matt Danson definitely going to be looking forward to the Charlotte Roval, and since he knows that he's going to be finishing at least relatively well, if not getting a race win based on his previous performances, I have a feeling he might be one of those guys that might just be more content to run around the mid-pack so far tonight and just try to keep out of the trouble up front.
That could be big for him as well, because you mentioned obviously he is the bubble driver coming into this race. Well, could be interesting to note that if he ends up below the cut line, right, doesn't have a great run here tonight at Talladega, but then could go on to have a good run and possibly win at the Roval next time out, that would technically make him, right, a driver bumping somebody else out. So all of those are very interesting things that we need to keep an eye on over the course of this Talladega race, and of course next week into the race at the Roval, where we close out this round of 12. 42 is an important number to hold because the NASCAR Cup Series these days caps the field at 40, but in this SimSeats Real Sim Racing Cup Series, we still allow 43 cars to qualify in. That's big because if there was just 2 more cars to grid up in this race, then it would have been go or go home qualifying, right? That could have been a big storyline, because could you imagine a playoff driver missing the field? Fortunately, nobody going home tonight.
And that is a good thing as well. And one thing that I honestly like about being that close to the limit is it means it will be a fully stacked field, -1 on the day, which should be a relatively entertaining race. Of course, that also means the initial restart could be a huge scramble as well. Of course, you talk about how important the draft package is. Get anywhere outside of about 7, 8 tenths, and you're going to be dropping back like a rock with no speed to be able to help you out. So we couldn't even be seeing a couple of those guys further in the back being eliminated from the main field very early on.
Also important to note, because as the points are handed out in this series, everybody who finishes 36th position on the back only scores 1 single point. When you get up to 35th, you get 2, 34 gets 3, etc., right? So this guarantees there's going to be about a half a dozen cars only scoring 1 single point tonight. There is a lot more on the line for your playoff drivers, knowing that there's all of these non-playoff cars in the field, meaning a bad finish in a 42-car field is a lot worse off than a bad finish in a 32-car field. But qualifying has drawn to a close. Let's go trackside and take a look at your sim seats starting grid, and it is a pair of playoff drivers on the front row. Agnew Phillip alongside with Michael Lariah will bring us to the green flag tonight, with Nick Silva, Ross Cato back on row number 2. Brandon Six will start from 5th ahead of Seth the Merchant in P6.
If Washington tied with Seth the Merchant for that 6th place, currently sitting in 7th place, then you got Trey Brown and Jimmy Miller, both drivers just 2 thousandths behind David Washington in 8th and 9th. Eric de Blasio rounds out the top 10 with Brett McBride and Brandon Bowie separated by just 1 thou.
Really tight, obviously, in this full throttle qualifying session. You can see that Matt Danson and Adam de Blasio going to be on row number 7. Sam Nieto and Andrew Freenosh in the thick of things on row number 8. You've also got Grant Davis and Sean Casto in your top 18.
That will put Liam Sheen, road course winner, down in 19th place, alongside Jaron Winemaster. Michael Cozy Jr. rounds out the top half of the field, alongside Eric Stanford, Joseph Tyson, Chris Rabel, 23rd and 24th.
And continuing on down through, Dylan Jones and Matthew Barra will gird it up through the number 26 spot. Ahead, Cody Harris in the number 27 position, and Sean Kalis will roll from 28th. Bradley Burke is 29th, and Nick Amara is 30th.
Put Trevor Trago down in 31st, Zachary Carr 32nd, and Nick Cohen is going to be 33rd with Dominic Howe in 34th. Mariusz Leszczynski is going to be in 35th with Brian Chambliss in 36th.
And at the back of the grid here this afternoon, Kaczynski, Kamer, Schmidt, and Murano, your top 40 cars in qualifying. Manazzi, Major, and Joe Yakes, 41st and 42nd. It is important to note, again, with that threat that there may have been a bump, right? 42 cars, a big number. Every single car in the field put down a time in qualifying, Nolan. Not often do we see that. Let's talk about this Talladega Super Speedway, the biggest and fastest oval on NASCAR's calendar. 2.66 miles in length, with banking at more than 33 degrees and 4 stories tall in each of its 4 corners. Of course, notably tonight at this racetrack is that start-finish line is not in that traditional centered position in the tri-oval. It is much further down towards the exit of the pit road. That's big for 2 reasons. 1, restart procedure, right? Can't change lanes before the start-finish line. Drivers can have often, opportunities to tempt that. They have to keep that in mind. And also, of course, Nolan, in these infamous Talladega run to the checkered flags, that extra couple of hundred of feet has made a difference a lot.
Especially through that tri-oval where you get that extra half a lane that opens up on the inside line. That has opened up the doors so many times. Drivers try to sprint through, not to mention these big wrecks that have trying to go for the lead. You think about back to Brad Keselowski and Carl Edwards in 2009 with that huge wreck coming to the checkered flag. Even with just those 2 cars, should be a good race of the checkered here tonight.
And we're excited to have you with us on RaceSpot TV. Pace car is down and in. The field is in the hands of the 94 of Agnew Phillip. It is the second race of the round of 12. As we say, let's go playoff racing at Talladega. early trouble was that Liam Sheen, who got booted out of line in the 1 car. Yes, it was. No caution, we stay green. There was a big checkup on the inside line of the racetrack. Nieto gets some damage, and so does Sheen. He hangs on to that 1 machine, but a tough break early for one of your playoff competitors who drops way back in the field as Agno Phillip in a drag race with Ross Cato, but it's Cato on the outside with the push from the Merchant, who will lead lap number 1 and score the first point of the afternoon.
And that Logic Geologist machine going to push Ross Cato to the front. They both clear down right in front of Michael Araya, who is going to fall back to 3rd. The outside lane slowly clearing out as 1 by 1. Drivers start to trickle down to the inside lane. Already you can see a small gap forming right around the 23rd place. Here's the look from Liam Machine. You see Nieto, Michael Cozy Jr. behind him. Checkup started with Matt Danson. Nieto checked up. Sheen and Cozy could not check up enough.
Losing the track position is one thing, but again, it's that back end damage that Liam Sheen got in the contact that I'm concerned about. Cato got a little bit of it as well. Not Cato, but the other driver that was back there in the mix, I should say, because Cato's up for leading this race. But the cars with that back end bumper damage, it's a concern because it's going to be a lot more difficult for the car behind you to push you flush, right? To give you a solid and stable updraft. Not the end of the world, but certainly not damage I want on lap number 1 of a 94-lap, 250-mile dash. As you can see Zach Carr using the draft, the middle of the pack there in 27th spot to get the fastest lap of the race thus far. So the question has always been, Nolan, with this package, you talked about you need numbers, you need support. It's been more like that with this current package than any other, right? You can't really get 2 cars to the outside and making it on their own. And this is what I thought was going to happen, right? Everybody wants to get down in line to the bottom. Everybody wants to maintain positioning. I mentioned the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series race last Tuesday night, where that one was basically decided on green flag pit stops, right? Same distance as tonight. You're going to need about 2 trips down to the pit lane. If we see a green flag race this afternoon, that race was decided on the groups of cars were able to execute on green flag pit stops and get away from the rest of the pack. So would not be shocked at all if large swaths of this race are spent with guys just trying to stay out of trouble, as your race leaders are very quickly going to catch up to William Schmidt. The number 49 machine was not on the starting grid. He started this race from pit lane and will very quickly be a lap down. Just cannot run at this racetrack without drafting help.
Absolutely cannot, and William Schmidt knows he can't block what's coming. He's going to move up to the wall in the tri-oval and let the field of, well, about 12 cars strong now on the inside line thunder on past, along with second train flying up in just a few moments' time. You mentioned, of course, getting down pit road is going to be crucial to see who might be able to make this one, you know, if it goes green. I think the potential for this race going green is definitely very huge, and it's not an easy pit road to get down. It sure looks easy. We've got, what is that, like probably a dozen lanes or so that you could use to try to get down to pit road. But it's worth noting, you're slowing this car down from 200 miles an hour to just 55 in about 4 or 5 seconds. And these are not brakes that are being used. It's foot to the floor the entire way around. These are cold brakes, definitely working well below the optimal temperature, and that could mean serious trouble if these guys come down in the big pack altogether.
Looking like the top 9 or so cars trying to pull away just a little bit. Looks like probably the numbers, the top 10. Danson at the back of this group, a little bit ahead of Trey Browning, but I just don't think that you're going to be able to see a pack break away, just under green like this. I think the separation is really going to come through a pit stop. But Seth the Merchant makes it interesting to call it here. He is going to jump out of line and forfeit position number 2, Nolan. That very clearly looked like a designed move by Seth the Merchant. Not a guy who's going to accidentally take a misstep like that. And the problem is, how far will he go back? Because his teammates have driven around him. So thought maybe he wanted to, group back up with some of the other Altus cars, but Seth the Merchant has driven himself by already. So maybe just not comfortable running up front this early on. The Merchant is not a playoff guy. Looks like he and Cozy are getting hooked up here. Remember how well that duo worked when we went racing in the regular season finale at Daytona International Speedway about 2 months ago. He's not in the playoffs, so all he cares about is winning the race. He doesn't really care about leading laps throughout it.
One thing that I'm a little bit concerned about with seeing Seth Merchant looking up Michael Koza Jr. is that front end damage that Michael Koza Jr. got. That's from that lap 1 checkup from Liam Sheen and Sam Vieto. Koza is the one that rear-ended Sheen. And that is some pretty significant front-end damage. It'll certainly be affected aerodynamic-wise. I wonder how far down on horsepower that car is. Doesn't look like it's too bad at the moment. And if he can get a good push going, Seth Merchant, maybe they can make up 1 or 2 spots, but they need a couple of guys to work with them if they're going to have a hope in doing so. Sean Castle thought about moving to the outside line to go with them, but he eventually decided to tuck back in. But that doesn't mean that you don't got other guys that are looking to maybe make some moves. Zachary Carr has moved up to the outside line as well.
And here's a look on board with Carr. Briefly mentioned him earlier as one of the drivers who had put down a quick lap. That was after, of course, just kind of using the draft in the middle of the road there to catch back up to some of the other drivers in the field. Zach Carr, somebody else who could be a big threat at the Charlotte Roval next week, but on his own, not that threatening at the moment on the outside. It's just he and then those 2 Altus cars ahead of him that you see. That's the only people on the outside right now. Everybody else is on the bottom, and Carr's going to continue to slide back up there without help.
Carr just about to be passed up by the last car in this line of Cody Harris. Will he tuck back in? Answer is absolutely yes, he will. That leads the 2 Logitech Gialtis Esports machines in this leading train to work together on the outside line. That front train, it's actually from about first place on back to about 27th. Then you got 28th on back, just a little bit behind. Everybody else is starting to scatter apart to their own little train. So far, this front pack here is the biggest one we have on the field so far. The 2 Gialtis machines tucked in a line behind this grouping, making it a firm 27 cars all running one line.
And if you're in that group 27th on the back, I think there is a little bit of cause for concern, right? I mentioned earlier when the top 10 had a little bit of a gap, like a half a second over Browning and some other cars, right? That I don't really think that's going to matter. That group back in 28th position, led by Trago, they need to be concerned. You cannot lose touch, and they are more at risk of losing touch than that top 20 was to splintering, just because they don't have the same numbers that the cars in this lead group have. And here's a great look off of the back of race leader Ross Cato, who has been well and in control of this race since he got that push to the race lead after starting from 4th on the grid. Olsen Ragno Phillip didn't even get to lead a lap. He sits 3rd. Again, your playoff drivers represented. They're highlighted in red on the left-hand side of your screen tonight. You can also identify them on track by the red splitters, those windshield banners, and the spoilers in the field. So playoff cars right now, 2, 3, 4, 8, and 9. Ahead of 11, 12, 15, 20, 21, and 29. Liam Sheen is the lowest running of the playoff cars in 29th at the moment. We've documented what happened to him on the opening lap of this race, but it is a high-speed freight train at about 190. Well, 191 is what they get down to into the corner. They're getting up to 195 by the time they get off and in. And again, would not be surprised if a majority of the field is happy with this for a good portion of this race.
Sooner or later, you're going to get those guys that are going to get a little bit more impatient and they want to make their way up to the front. Because at the end of the day, if you want to win this race, you can't sit back here in the 25th place forever. You got to make these moves eventually. The question is, when do you actually want to make these moves? So a lot of people tend to start making these moves when we get about 15, maybe 20 laps left to go. Lap 10 is still a little bit early. I feel like everybody at the moment, as they're showing here, just can tend to kind of run around in their own little fields here and mind their own business. Now, you mentioned, of course, Ross Cato being able to be pushed up to the front, and so far, Cato showing no sign of wanting to dip out of the lead. The one problem Ross Cato has is he is burning a lot more fuel. Everybody else behind him is just being able to sit back and be content. That means Cato's going to have to come on in a little bit sooner than the other guys in this pack might have to, which is bad news if nobody goes down with him.
And that is where you need coordination, right? A big story in the eNASCAR race last week was that very same thing, right? Nick Ottinger led a Team Conti drill aisle contingent who pitted early, right? Separated themselves from the rest of the field. They pitted early, and they were able to draft in a pack of 8 to get well ahead of the rest of the field. And because of that, one driver was out in front, and on both runs it was Nick Ottinger, and I was curious, was that going to hurt Nick, right? But they had a well-coordinated plan where they all pitted on Nick's number, right? He didn't get left out to dry. So Ross Cato is burning significantly more fuel, you're right, because he's full throttle all the way around. Everybody else in line constantly lifting, feathering, or just running, somewhere close to 75 to 80% throttle all the way around the racetrack. They're going to burn fuel slower. They're going to be able to go longer. So Cato's really going to have to hope that these drivers are not wanting to go to the very, very end of a fuel run early in this race, because that would obviously leave him out to dry. He's going to be a handful of laps shorter on fuel than everybody else would be. So just something to keep in mind, as Cato is going to need help. And we will see if his fast-forward esports machine will have help when the time comes. But, 94-lap race, I don't think we have to seriously start thinking about pit stops until we get past lap 25. Pitting near 30-31 would be kind of that sweet spot. But again, some drivers may want to go earlier or later. One thing that we do not have in this series, Nolan, that you do in the eNASCAR series, is we take a look at the board there with Matt Barr. You can see him rocking the VR goggles in the bottom right corner. Is we don't really have alliances of 8, 9, 10 cars, right? Some of the bigger teams have 4, 5, maybe even 6, but that's it. So I don't know if the logistics of the teams in this series would allow a group of a dozen cars to coordinate, at least at the start of the race. Now, you're going to want to make friends as you go, but team dynamics, a little bit different here in RSR. They are at the top level of the eNASCAR ranks.
When you already got a couple of guys that are looking to kind of make alliances with different teams, you've got the Car Racing Designs number 26 currently heading up the train. That includes some of the Logitech Gialtis guys. I see one of the Keeping It Real boys, I think, in there as well. So you've got, this group of 6 here that just slowly started to make their way up through the order. And this is able to mount this charge because that second train, they actually managed to catch them, making this train 36 long. And how about Zachary Carr getting abandoned by the entirety of the outside line and headed up by the Logitech Gialtis esports machine? So talk about burning the bridge as soon as you make it. And that is going to put our good friend Mike Koza Jr. up in front of this second train, trying to punch through around the outside line.
Oh, and it's getting a little bit sloppy in front of them as they were lapping Grant Davis. There was just a little bit of miscommunication right ahead of this group, and we're going to get away with it. But Grant Davis held the bottom. He wanted to kind of get absorbed by this lead pack, and Brandon Six just really didn't make up his mind if he wanted to go around or behind Davis. You can see Six in the 66 is behind Davis's 24 Chevrolet. When he stayed in line and just checked everybody up, and it was a hairy moment for Jeremy Miller and Rhett McBride. We are fine and we stay green. Davis and Schmidt now the only cars one lap down. And Grant Davis, of course, is drafted with cars inside of the top 10, so he is ahead of Schmidt in position for the Lucky Dog, but not by a ton. So that's another kind of secondary battle to watch in this race, as those drivers who fell off early obviously wanting to get into the Lucky Dog position to get the wave around it if a yellow flag were to happen. But the race leaders have settled down. Again, just logging laps right now. No big movers towards the front, Nolan. Here's the second look at the 24. The leaders get it, but watch that 66. He's going to look like he's going high and then change his mind right there. He pulls down. Jeremy Miller thought there was going to be room there.
Make contact with that David Washington, I believe, in the 98 car. That got all sorts of hairy in the middle of the field. So Jeremy Miller having a bit of a scare, and that checked up the entire front grouping, which actually was good news for that second train. They were able to punch as high up as 15th place from the outside line. Now, they have slipped back since then, but if they can get linked up on that outside line to get that form, they've got about 8, 9 cars up there. That's enough to mount a charge in a field this size. You just need to find the speed and, find yourself the room to be able to properly go forward. And right now, nobody's really pushed each other in that second train, which is why they're just dropping back at the moment.
And here's a good split-screen look at that lead pack on the left-hand side of your screen, and then the side-by-side headed up by that Logitech Gialtis duo. Cozy pushed by DeMerchant. We'll see where they clock in at the stripe. They were 21st last lap. This lap they will clock in 21st as well. So not making a ton of headway, but they do have numbers up there, right? They got Burke. They got Minoxie Major. You got Zach Carr. You got Leschinski. You got the 6 machine there at Cody Harris as well. You have some numbers. but 8 does not beat 28, right? And they're still evidently struggling to get up through the pack. They need more cars from the bottom to be like, yeah, that outside's got some momentum, and start creeping up the hill slowly by slowly, and then maybe that number will swing. But I just don't know if the risk versus reward is there for a guy running 12th, Nolan, right? At this point in the race, I'd be happy with 12th, right? Do I risk that to go to the outside with these guys in draft? Because if it works, could go to the race lead. But if that outside falls apart, I could just burn P12. If I'm a Freenosh or a Bowie here, right, that outside line dies, I can go from 12th to 30th if it doesn't work. So that's why I think they're having trouble getting a lot of drivers in on it, because most drivers are content with where they're running right now. A lot of drivers come into these plate races just hoping to survive.
And I think the other reason why we're seeing a lot of these guys not necessarily wanting to jump out from the inside line is actually in relation to green flag pit stops. Of course, you mentioned it's bad having to, slide so far back down the order from 12th to 30th place. That also actually affects the green flag pit stop window as well. If 30th place comes in with the race leaders, yes, they're coming in at the same time, but there's actually going to be about 2 to 3 seconds worth of time that's totally separating them. They're not going to be able to link up when they get off a pit road to the same drafting group again. It's really only going to be, the top 5, top 10 grouping, which is why it's so easy to see, a 36 car train go down to these little 7, 8 car pockets after the green flag pit window because of just how they are when they come in. And obviously, you're not going to be able to have a guy from 30th place go side by side with a guy in first down to the pit road. That's not how that works here.
It's not how it works. And again, you mentioned how difficult it could be getting onto the pit lane, and it's a conversation I had with Steve Letarte last Tuesday, right? This is not a track that is difficult because the geometry is difficult, I think is the word I landed on, and I think it fits it well, right? Darlington's a tricky track because of the geometry of getting onto pit road. Same as Dover, right? Not here at Dega. If you had to, $1 million on the line, Nolan, to hit 55 miles an hour, you would hit it every single time because you would just get on the brakes right out of 4, right? Because it is such a huge, wide apron and a long, straight shot, the reason so many people struggle to enter pit lane here at Talladega is because they get too aggressive and they try to get a little bit too much out of it. And listen, that is what you need to do. If you do not nail it on pit road entry, right? If you're down to pit road speed 2-3 seconds too early, that 2-3 seconds is going to be very tough to make up on track. So you do have to push it. But that is why drivers make mistakes, because they push it too hard. Track's not the problem, it's the drivers. And not a lot of people execute that art of green flag pit stop entry and exit. And I think it's something that is really important at any track.
Well, and then you mentioned, of course, how difficult it is just to nail it perfectly. That's hard enough alone when you're just running by yourself. Then tag on about 15 plus other guys that are trying to come in and do the exact same thing around you. It's not uncommon to see guys going 3, sometimes even 4 wide, just coming down to the pit road, almost getting more racing action on the pit entry than you see actually out on the track at a race like this. You got all these guys trying to make their own lines, and obviously everybody's braking points are going to be different. You can't have every single person just slamming the brakes at the exact same time. I mean, I'm glad it's not that way either, because that would take all the fun out of pit stops, wouldn't it?
Oh, we love the drama. I'm here for it, right? Drivers might not be a fan if it gets a little bit sloppy, but that's what we're here for. I mean, we want to see consequential moves. We talk about how big this race is in the complexion of the championship. Talladega is a big race anytime, right? Because it's a race where the mid-pack guys, or the guys who, don't have the time to put in hours of practice like the top runners do and run low in fields here on Monday nights, have a chance to win. Anybody can win, and that's the 24 car out of line and headed to pit road. Davis just about missed it. Joseph Tice did. The 5 is in the grass, coming by the tower on the front straightaway. He missed his box, or he'll get into the box, but that's going to be a penalty. He missed the pit lane entry. We were just talking about it, because we have those issues. And, consequential race, just mentioned it, mistake there for Joseph Tice. 4 drivers were in. They were joined by Mara, Burke, and of course Davis, who was the lapped car in. And again, there's no, nothing protruding the 5 car. That's just overcooking it.
And Nicholas Barr actually did the exact same mistake and almost followed his tire tracks through the grass perfectly to get back out to the track. So they both ended up with those little penalties, which is so unfortunate for them. Surprisingly, though, they got out in front of guys like Grant Davis McNamara and Bradley Burke. So potential speeding penalties elsewhere throughout the grid to kind of shake things up.
Tough calls. That's going to take you out of this race. Joseph Tice is still in his box serving a penalty. Everybody else who pitted with him was in and out of the box in 11 seconds. He spends a total of 52 seconds in the box. That is going to double the time on pit road as anybody else, right? To use an example, Matt Morris spent 34 seconds on pit road. Joseph Tice spent 70 seconds total on the pit lane. So that penalty doubles his pit time and is going to be at least one lap down, and if this continues to go green, significantly more, because again, he won't have that drafting help. Same issue that we saw with Grant Davis early in this race. And William Schmidt, when you don't have help, you are just not able to keep up and keep speed with everybody else. But now is where I think it's more of a realistic number, right? Not everybody always agrees. It's a 94 lap race, but let's make the math easy for us, Nolan, right? Say 90. 90 is your magic number. Not everybody always agrees. All right, that means we're pitting at 30 and we're pitting at 60, because if you can go 35 laps on fuel, some drivers are going to want to go that 35, because then they could get to 70. And then at the end, hey, I've only got 20 laps to go. They can actually spend less time in the box, taking a little bit less fuel. Now, at an intermediate track, I don't think the 4 seconds is going to matter, right? Because that's more of a race that's determined based on just your speed over the course of a run. But here at Dega, you can instantly gain 2, 3, 4 seconds by a call like that. Could be big. So that's something else to watch, but easily I think the magic number is about 31, 32 to comfortably come down pit lane for pit stop number 1 of 2 in a race that looks like it has a good chance of going green.
And I kind of agree with you on the pit stops there. I mean, the why strategy at a track like this, and it's honestly one of the most popular strategies, is to just constantly run the tank out dry, because at the same time, you never know if you're going to find yourself, in the thick of a big one. And then, of course, that's a free caution where you can, of course, get a free pit stop. Just run the tank out dry. You're not going to lose anything by it. You have to come down within that 5-lap range anyway. And like you said, it's less fuel you have to take towards the end of the race as well. So that's why it's such a popular strategy to, just kind of fill it all up and run the tank out dry constantly over and over and over again, because each time you do that, it shaves off the potential pit stop time further on in the race.
There's a good onboard look there, looking up to Rhett McBride on the board with Trey Browning. Browning in 10th position at the moment. McBride, a playoff driver, in 9th. In the Sim 3D iRacing iFlag at Chevrolet Camaro. That's Jeremy Miller's number 27 machine. Remember, he was almost involved in that tricky checkup earlier in this race. But no changes in the running order. It is still Cato 1, Lariah 2, and Phillip 3. It has been that way for about 27 of the 28 laps that have been in the works so far here tonight in this Sim Seats 250. Just looking around, like the mid-pack has Nick Cohan, name we haven't talked a lot about, Nolan, but I wanted to give him a call, who hasn't made a ton of starts this year, but good to see Nick back on track here tonight at the virtual Talladega Superspeedway. There's a funny story behind this car. You can see it says Danson Construction on the hood, Nolan, and I don't know if you heard this story, but some of the drivers were joking around with each other in the Discord earlier today. And last time Nick Cohan was on track, Matt Danson called him a wrecking ball. He said he wasn't a fan of how the 53 drove, and he's a wrecking ball on track. So Nick Cohan is driving a Danson Construction number 53 paint scheme tonight to kind of poke fun at that. So it'd be fun if he and Danson get alongside each other, but I love a good a humorous paint scheme in the field, and good to see Nick back on track.
As soon as you said Matt Danson called Nick on a wrecking ball, I knew where that story was going immediately, and I'm so glad I was completely right to merge again. Squirrely deeper in the field, nearly got turned by Eric de Blasio as he tried to tuck in line. De Blasio wasn't having anything of it, was forced to yield, and I tell you what, that is one to take a look at, because how far sideways that car was, now fast and shot sideways, that might be one for the top 10 highlights. Talk about some cat-like reflexes.
Yeah, Carlo, and I find it a weird move because Cozy wasn't going down. I just feel like it's a weird time for Danson to want to go low, and Danson was clear. but he didn't commit to it. He only came down a half a lane. He really wasn't certain if he was clear. And watch this.
Whoops. Flipping around.
If anybody could save that race car, it is Divergent.
Crash.
Meanwhile, it is Calamity on the pit lane entry. What just happened? Michael Larayo is in the grass. Ross Cato is in the grass. And I think it's centered around the 12. The 12 of Cato missed pit road, took Larayo with him, but it wasn't just those two. There was somebody else in the grass as well. Manazzi Major, there he is. Major wrecked onto pit road. He also missed his pit stall significantly. His night may be done. Sheen is in and out of the box, and what happened?
Well, I can tell you what happened to Ross Cato.
Yeah, there's two incidents. There's the Cato and, or there's Sam Nieto and Manazzi Major. They were the first two to get together. And then further up the road on the entry was Casto and the contact with Larayo. So here's the first bit with a 12.
Just coming into pit road, he's going to overshoot. Larayo tries to pass around the outside as Cato locks up. Larayo's left with nowhere to go. Agno Phillip was slamming on the brakes and was still in the 4-tire lockup to avoid running into one of the Logitech Gialdas cars even after he was well into pit road. That's what happened to Nieto and Major. Nieto just lost it coming down off the track. He got rear-ended by Dylan Jones. And Manazzi Major just couldn't scramble, and Cody Harris got a rear-view mirror full of the 82 car. So it turns out Nieto was also trying to come in, and he missed his box as well.
And of course, Manazzi Major struggles because he was the number one pit stall, basically, right? He was very early on the pit lane there, so when he had his incident, he slid down pit road, missing his box, and tried to back it up. I wonder if he parked that car on his own recognizance, or if he got a penalty, actually, for going backwards, right? You can only go so far backwards on the track before iRacing will park you. So we mentioned pit stops are coming up. They happened right on the money as we were expecting, but that was a messy pit cycle. But half the field has pitted. Trevor Trago, Joe Yates most recently down to the pit lane for service. We are waiting on this group of 12 now in the race lead to decide it. Here's the Agno Phillip issue, and this will give you a perspective on pit road. As you can see the contact, Larayo gets tagged, he ends up, and then locking up in front. Look out! Danson hit the brakes, and that may be one of the worst pit cycles, Nolan, I have ever seen.
I agree. I've seen, at Talladega, let's just say this, at least in iRacing, it's never uncommon to see, the 1 or 2 cars sliding wide. That was 5 different drivers total, though, that was having their own little struggles on pit road. 4 of them actually ended up getting sideways into each other. I have never seen something quite like that. Talk about calamity. That is bound to split apart everybody up in the top grouping. I know Nick Silver is still leading, but that being said, they have yet to come in as well, him along with the guys down to 12.
And we'll watch to see how is all of this going to blend back out after pit service. I mean, Trey Browning doesn't look like he's concerned with pitting to be way out there on the right-hand side. So this could be the alternate strategy that I was talking about earlier, right? You're not going to be able to one-stop this race. That is just not going to happen. But if, again, you go all the way to the end on the first cycle, all the way to the end on the second cycle, you may be able to eliminate some time from your last pit stop and therefore be a little bit quicker on the box. That could be the strategy. Go long on this stint, go long in the middle, and when you come down pit road for the second time, you do not need to be down pit road for an entire 11-second period, whatever it needs to fill up the tank all the way. Kamer and Kalis have pitted, now waiting on the top 10 drivers to come down pit road. Let's see if Silver and Six want to. They are 1 and 2, but still committed to staying out.
I'm curious to see how long it'll take before they decide to make their run down to pit road as well. There you can see Kyle Kamer, the SK Sim Racing number 8 Ford Mustang, just leaving pit road at this moment. So that will be Kyle Kamer now out and away after completing his pit stop cycle. And I thought he was in pit road a little bit quick there, Evan. 23 seconds total on the pit road because he missed his box.
It's tough, and again, when you make any mistake that takes you away from the cars who you pitted with, it is devastating in a race like this, and so many mistakes may end up being the defining moment of this race. This drivers just blew it and blew it on their own accord. Is still this group up front of Silver, Six, Miller, and Browning have yet to come down to the pit lane. That is the top 4 breakaway. There is a small gap of about a second and a half, and then you'll find the rest of the cars who need to pit. That'll be Bowie, de Blasio, Casto, Windmaster, and Rabel. All those drivers 5th through 10th, running from 1.9 to 2.5 seconds off the race leaders. Now, we can try to guesstimate, Nolan, how is this going to cycle out right? The lead car who has pitted is Agnell Phillip. He is 41 seconds behind the race leaders. Pit lane service can go anywhere from 31 to 37 seconds, so I think it'll be tight on the race out for the pit lane, but I think Agnell Phillip may cycle through the race lead when it's said and done. Let's find out. Here they come. The 3 car is Silver's in, but Jeremy Miller is not even close. A huge accident behind. Who was that in the air? It's Eric Stanford on his lid as he crashed into the 11 car and went flipping at the entrance to pit road.
You see something new every day. One driver that I might have seen a bit too much, Brandon Bowie, nearly got cleaned out by all of this. He was at the 34 that just ducked down, and that's a huge yikes. Talk about hitting the wall in that wrong spot. I didn't even think it was possible for that to happen if you hit the wall there.
And I think it was all that 11 de Blasio who just cut across the 19. The 19 machine was not trying to come down pit road. And that wasn't the only issue. I mean, that's a huge wreck in its own right. But even before that happened, we had Miller a mile out and into the grass. And it's a 2-car wreck, basically, between the 11 and the 19 machine. But no caution. This race stays green. And again, pit road continues to be out of control. Miller is only pitting this time by because he missed it so badly last time. He took an extra lap around. And that chaos takes a bit of the drama out of it, Nolan, but Agnell Phillip has indeed cycled back to the race lead in this race, much as we expected. But he's got a challenge up top. Is he even going to lead a lap? Here comes the 99 and the 57 up the road. There you can see the 27 Miller is finally down for service. But here's the battle for the race lead, 3 wide, and the Altus duo, who are pushing back in the 20s, Nolan, find themselves in the top 5 after pit stops.
And in fact, going to be a 1-2 now as they manage to clear around Agnell Phillip, and they coordinate beautifully to get on down. The merge went down a bit quicker, I think, than Michael Cozy Jr. expected, though. And that will put Michael Cozy Jr. now up in the race lead. Impressive after he got collected in that lap 1 melee with Liam Sheen.
Here's a second look at Miller, and there is nobody to blame in that one but himself, and he knew immediately, and he decided that I'm just going to go back around Nolan. He loses a ton of time doing that, right? Because he's slow. He needs to get up the speed. He has to go all the way around. But he knows that if he enters pit road from the grass, that's going to be a penalty for an unsafe pit entry. He'll probably be held for 30 seconds anyways. So he made a split-second decision. Hey, my call is going to be to go all the way around, and that's probably going to be the better decision than just taking the 30-second penalty. But through a messy cycle of pit stops, Cozy back to the race lead, working lap number 40 of 94. This lead pack has reset and is 14 cars big all the way through. Marius Leschinski, 14th position, is the lead pack. The secondary pack is 5+ seconds off of the race leaders, and it's not really a big secondary pack because so many drivers had problems. But there's a lot of groups of 2 and 3 race cars just kind of scattered all over the place.
After all of that, the fact that Michael Cozy Jr. of all people takes the lead, I think that sums up quite nicely just how chaotic this last pit window was. I mean, Michael Cozy Jr., on the last green flag run, he never made it higher than 15. I want you to put that in perspective. For the majority of the time, he was running around in the bottom 10 or so of the top 36 grouping that was all in one big trade. And after all of that, he's the guy in the lead because of all the carnage that happened on pit road. I think that kind of shows you just how chaotic the cycle really was, and the fact that they can have so many cars linked up together, even though it's mostly lap traffic interspace with lead lap cars of an about 18 car strong group. it's impressive to me as well.
And of course, it's the drivers who pitted earlier, right? Cozy, DeBurchin, Philip McBride, and Cohan. They all pitted 11 laps ago who cycled back to the race lead. The execution, in fact, isn't that bad for Silver, Six, and Bowie, right? Those were the guys who had stayed out. They end up 6, 7, and 8. I mean, they're right here in the mix. You saw that they were a couple of car lengths back a lap or two ago, but they are all back together once more. So, didn't end terribly for them. I think that goes to show you that there really wasn't a magic number on the pit stops, right? Nobody pitted earlier than anybody else. Nobody pitted later than anybody else, and was able to make up substantial time. All the time lost seemed to be by mistakes on pit road and not by people just drafting through the field. So it all balances out. And again, racing with 13 other drivers in the lead pack is a lot more sustainable than racing with 30 others. So these guys up front are enjoying this 14-car breakaway as they're going to turn a lap. Sean Kalis, who's 27th position, and Sean Casto in 28th.
The 43 and the 52 showing that even within the two-car train, they've still got some decent pace by the fact that they weren't swallowed up entirely by the field, and they've been trying to hold their own around the outside line as well. I think they're just going to drag the brakes a tad just so they can fall in and maybe see if they can find some space in the middle of this trainer. See if they can force some space in the middle with that side draft, but still remains a Logitech GLC Sports 1-2 up in front. Agdal Phillip, I know, will be probably trying to make some moves here later on as we get closer and closer to that halfway point.
And of course, it becomes the waiting game again, right? You almost get a little bit, I don't know if suspicious is the right word, right? But you're looking at all the other drivers in your group and you're saying, all right, we are, single filed out. We're running. We're logging some laps at this juncture in the race. But we know that there's going to be another pit cycle at some point, and admittedly, it's not going to be that far away. Now is the time to start making duos, right? It's clear that Cozy and DeBurchin are working together. How committed to them are Philip, McBride, and Cohan? Silver, Six, and Bowie are going to be able to go significantly deeper into this run than anybody else. Will they do that again? So lots of questions to be answered as we go on aboard with Matt Mara here. He has done a fantastic job after starting this race back in 26th position to join this lead group. I mean, it was a pretty stagnant plus-minus in the first half of the race, right, Nolan? I mean, you just had a couple of guys up, 6, 4, 5, nothing major. Now you look at the lead group, Cozy plus 20, Cohan plus 28, Mara plus 17, Burke's up 19, Jones is up 14, and then Carr and Leschinski, the final two cars of the pack, plus 19 and plus 21 respectively. So there's just as many 20th or worse placed cars on the grid in the top 10 now as there are guys who started up front. So this race has been decided thus far on pit strategy.
And I think you called it perfectly at the start of this race. If this race ended up going green, it was going to be decided on the pit strategy. And sure enough, look at where we are. You got guys like Ross Cato who are running up in front and even in the lead for majority of this race. Cato now finds himself all the way down in 33rd place, minus 29 on the day for the number 12. So it does show pit stops really are everything at any race, in all honesty. It's not just Talladega, but with how just the nature of the track is at Dega and how fast you're going and the fact that it is foot to the floor, it's a lot more amplified.
Just tracking kind of where those lapped cars are. Also want to note a couple of drivers are out of this race. Benazzi Major has gone to the garage. So has Eric Stanford. Stanford officially retiring. Major, I don't think, has officially retired. But for all intents and purposes, his night is done. There's about a dozen plus drivers one lap down right now. Realistically, by the time we get to our next cycle of pit stops, that's going to be as many as 15 cars a lap down, because you got guys like Sheen and Yakes and Nieto more than 35 seconds off of the race leaders. But, while we're just kind of rotting around here in the green, let's talk playoff cars, right? Let's kind of analyze how they were coming into this evening. Remember, Bowie, Lariah, Nieto, and Rabel were the drivers below the cut line coming into this race. Let's start with Brandon Bowie. He's riding in P8. He's in a very good position. Michael Araya, on the other hand, we talk about drivers, trying to maintain some track position. Laraya's not doing great. He was in the red coming into this race. He started second on the grid. Well, that car is way back in 27th position, and he is a lap down. So a big blow for Laraya that could put him in a must-win situation. Sam Nieto, his teammate, is right there with him. Nieto only 26th in the running order. That is not much better. Both of those drivers were in the red coming into this race. And then Chris Rabel is the driver who's making a little bit of noise. It's not a great run so far for Chris, but that 29 car rides in 16th position, Olin, and sometimes it's all you want out of a Talladega race, right, is an okay race. And he is standing to benefit from the poor nights of Sheen, Nieto, Laraya, and Danson behind him, which could be all that 29 needs.
And of course, don't forget, you got that huge pack that's currently up in front of him, and that is for the race lead. He's currently hanging out right near the tail end of the train that's slowly starting to catch up. But if there's some big mess up there that collects guys like Rhett McBride, like Agnell Phillips, Silver, Bowie, etc., he stands to gain a huge amount of points in that 29 car. So it would not surprise me if you saw him just kind of sitting back here, biding his time, waiting a little bit to see what will happen up in front. Now, that being said, we saw how crazy the first run was, even with the group of 36, but that was over the first 30 laps or so. That's nothing compared to what we might be seeing in the last 5. And speaking of which, crash in turn 3, Sean Kalis flying through the air and flipping down the bank in a turn number 3, turned by Matt Danson on the back straightaway.
And caution flag number 1. This changes the entire complexion of the race because we are outside of the fuel window. What happened in the battle for 31st and 32nd? What a hit! After Kalis got turned by Danson and took a wild ride, that 43 is destroyed.
Tell you what, we just talked about how Chris Rabel stands to gain a lot of points if there was a wreck that happened. He almost lost a lot of points, though. I think Chris Rabel might have even been able to wave a little bit of a hello to Sean Kalis as he drove right underneath the 43 car as he flew down the banking.
Very close call. It kind of comes out of nothing. Let's watch Chris Rabel's perspective. We're just riding in line up the road. There's a touch. Oh, and that car went over him as he held his line. He didn't even have a chance to swerve to avoid it. No, he just kind of rode in that lane, and he was about, I think, 2 feet from getting hit by the 43 car flipping through the air.
Have that to the amount of insane wrecks we've already had at this track, even just in the pit stops, and now we can see what yellow flag pit stops even look like. It's unsurprising that a lot of the guys are going to be coming down. I think that's a call that we kind of expected to see here. Stuff topped up on fuel, and there you see Sean Casto in the slow motion. There he goes over Chris Rabel, and look out for the 52 car having to scramble down. He's committed to the inside, just avoids Matt Danson of the 05, spun down the track as well. But that is huge, particularly for Danson, a playoff driver who could not afford too many mistakes, and he has to rely, I would imagine, on that road course race of the Roval to get himself back into contention.
Yeah, you see all the drivers coming off of the pit lane. This is an interesting situation, Olin, because Matt Danson was a lapped car, correct? And with the newer rules that were put in place for the postseason, lapped cars will be penalized for their first caused caution like it was their second. So because he claims this caution, he will not only, get that marked off, but he's not going to receive 1 point. He receives 2 penalty points, and because he's a lapped car, he's going to get a 1 lap black flag, a 30-second black flag essentially in the box. Now, it's that much more important because Matt Danson is also on probation. We talked about that suspension earlier this year. So his 2 points turns into 4. And 4 points for 1 incident is hefty.
Talk about a huge blow for the Logitech GLTC Sports machine. He needed to have a safe run here at Talladega. And I talked about this at the top of the broadcast as well. he knows if his performance that we've seen on other road courses is anything to go by, he'll be doing a very good job at the Roval. I would anticipate at the very least a top 10 on a bad day for Matt Danson at the Roval. He just needed to play this race safe, and that one bad bump as a lap car ends up just basically shooting himself in the foot if he wants to go for his championship hopes, assuming he doesn't get that win over at the Roval, which isn't easy in of itself. I mean, we know how crazy the Roval can get. So with that said and done, it goes back to the whole thing about one little mistake when you're going 200 miles an hour and you pay the price for it.
And if I was Danson, I'd probably just park the race car, right? I mean, a second incident is basically going to give you enough points to guarantee that you would be suspended for a race. Not probably what it would. That's how the math plays out. So he has to be careful that he's going to go out there and he's going to be a lap down, 2 laps down. He's going to have a damaged race car. He can still benefit some from if more cars wreck out of this race zone, but it's highly likely he finishes this race in the single digits, right? We talked about that 42 car field. Top 36 are the ones who can score more than just 1 point. So that's important. As you can see, all the wave around cars just go right through the poor iRacing pace car, but they're going to cycle themselves around and we'll hit the reset button. 42 laps to go, going to be the number when we come to the green flag. I don't think that's a doable number on fuel.
I wouldn't think it is either, considering we saw everybody coming in around lap 30 to 35. So I would imagine one pit stop is still remaining in this race, but now everybody's all bunched up. I don't know if I can take much more pit road chaos, especially if it's anything compared to what we saw last time. Now, Matt Danson, you mentioned about how he might want to park the car. Well, he has gone and done exactly that upon receiving the black flag.
And Matt Danson has parked his race car, so his night is done. And talk about the drama, of course, with him missing that race at Watkins Glen. Nolan, Liam Sheen getting the miraculous trip to victory lane, right, that allowed him to lock into these playoffs. So there was enough hype already about the Liam Sheen and Matt Danson face-off for road course supremacy. But Matt Danson is basically going to need to win that race at the Roval, or depending on, again, how this race shakes out, because we're not done yet, and a lot could happen, to be fair. But he's going to be in a position where he needs a very good run in order to be into the round of 8. So that'll be interesting. But a restart's coming up. Brandon Six and Nick Silver are on the front row. They were very brief on their trip down to the pit lane. Most drivers were down. They took 4 tires of fuel. Brandon Six opted to go for just fuel only, while Six and Silver are on the front row as the pace car dives down.
Pace car's into pit road, but it is still a long trip around that tri-oval before they are able to take that green flag. Brandon Six, and to keep it a real esports machine, he's going to be up there in front alongside Nick Silver. And then, of course, you got your Logitech GLDC Esports former 1-2 just in behind. Huge checkup already in the middle of the back portion of the double file field, but the green flag drops were underway. The inside line never goes, and they're already wrecking into pit road before we even get to the start-finish line. Guys like Mara and Davis are around.
2 cars, though, no caution, and we stay green as it was a checkup on the inside, a huge accordion effect, and it was Grant Davis and Nick Mara, as you mentioned, who went around. There is no caution. We stay green. The race down the back straightaway. Does the bottom become a dominant line like it did on the initial start of this race, or will more drivers be willing to stick with the top side?
And the crucial thing about that incident is the fact that a couple of those drivers, they are claiming they got, those unsafe pit entry penalties, how they spun down into pit road. Now, those will be cleared, but it's another one of those hazards about being spun at this point in the racetrack. It's an easy thing to have happen.
It's tricky. They basically spun into the exit of the pit lane, and iRacing basically protects that pit lane box with a hard, kind of safe area. Hey, you cannot enter anywhere but through the pit lane entry, but it was because of an incident, so race control has cleared that. Meanwhile, as we take a second look, you can see all of it. I mean, I don't know if the 30 missed the shift, but it abruptly checked them all up, and you can see they both spun down and underneath that green cone. That's why they were penalized, and now a caution behind. Huge crash for Joseph Tice. who spins like a top and lands on all fours.
That's the second time Joseph Tice's been involved in this, and I believe the second time he's been airborne as well. So Tice having a heck of a run. Nieto's claimed this one instantly. It happened well up the road. You can see this is a shot at the back straightaway. They're already checking up, and holy cow, Joe Yates, the 87, got pile drive down the back straightaway. I think it was Chambers and Nieto that kicked this one off.
And just a little bit of bumper hook is all it took. And that's why Sam Nieto hooked the 25 car around, and the caution flag comes out. So tough break. Sam Nieto claims responsibility for the incident, and the issue isn't that first bit of damage. It's the fact that Joe Yates was spinning in the middle of the road, and the 5 didn't see it coming, right? I mean, there's the wreck, but see Yates is in the middle of the road. Wait for it. Boom! I mean, a huge impact for the secondary cars.
Huge impact indeed. I mean, that was a really weird bump, though. I mean, I have a feeling that it was just, you know, it's a weird one to call, but I mean, good grief. That was one of the more wild incidents we've seen so far on the day, and that is, what is it, that the 4th time now they've had a car that's rolled in this race, but when it's the 2nd time it's been a caution.
Yeah, I mean, we have had a high number of accidents for only having 2 caution flags in this race. It is something important to note, and I mean, they have just been big wrecks. How many cars have been upside down tonight?
I think 3. You had, I think it was Ross Cato coming into pit road. You had Joseph Tice just down the back straightaway. Then you had the 42 earlier on in turn 3. I believe that was it for cars that have actually rolled over.
Well, big decision there is let's take one more look on the board with Cato, and again, he didn't see it up the road. That's the issue. I mean, they just couldn't see it until the car at the lead of that group dove at a line, and by that time it was a little bit too late to react. But now this gets interesting because I questioned on the last restart, Nolan, could we go 44 some odd laps to the end of this race? Well, most of the field is going to top off on fuel this time around as there's Kyle Kamer. Could have been a lot worse, to be honest, with the drive of the 8 machine. But all but your top 6 top off on fuel under this yellow. Silver, Bowie, 6, Mara, Leszczynski, Carl going to stay out. They'll assume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But everybody else comes down to pit road. I wonder if they could make it 38 to the end.
Watch this view from William Schmidt. There's Tice flying through the air, just barely glances through the hood on the left rear quarter panel. William Schmidt, lucky man right there in the 49.
Nieto is going to claim responsibility for the incident. We mentioned it off at the top that he claimed it pretty quickly. Feels bad about hooking that other driver around. So tough break for him. And Nieto is going to get sent to the back. Playout driver. So that's a tough blow for him in his hopes. Here's another slow motion look. And I mean, it's about as hard of a hit as you can get.
That is.
And here's him going under. Schmidt going underneath. Oh, and he got a piece. Shows. He got a good piece.
Oh, yeah. He got, like I said, he got lucky. That angle, though, there, Evan, that really shows just how high he actually got in the air.
Oh, he was way up there, and you could see he only had about 2 seconds, right, to really see what was happening. You could see he started to try to pull it up and out of the way, but by the time that he realized what was happening, it was just too late for really any reaction to be made. And just a tough result for all those drivers involved. And it'll continue to change the complexion of this race as light should be going out on top of the pace car this time. But I want to say a big thanks to our partners over at SimSeats for making tonight's broadcast possible. Since 2009, SimSeats has been designing and fabricating high-quality, made-in-the-USA driving simulators, including motion systems, complete turnkey iRacing packages, and custom fabrication. Their customer base includes all racers from the amateur to the pro ranks, and everyone on the SimSeats team is a weekend racer too. Their passion for racing drives them to build better sim racing equipment. Join SimSeats for the thrill of racing at any time, in any car, and on any track by visiting sim-seats.com to learn more information. 37, the magic number. I'm on a limb and say that some drivers are going to be able to make it by saving.
And pretty much everybody came down pit road again, like you mentioned, to top up on fuel. So we're definitely within that window where I think you might just be able to make it. It will be close though, particularly for the guys up front who are punching that hole through the air, because they're going to be burning more fuel than everybody behind them.
There are, at this moment, about 34 cars on the lead lap. That number has grown significantly. It was, almost half of that after the pit cycle, when we had that first cycle of green flag pit stops. But, of course, all the caution flags, wave arounds, lucky dogs have given substantial advantages to some of those lapped cars to get back up and into the mix. Something to notice always here on a Monday night, there are no quick repairs available to any of the drivers in the field. So it's important to note that a lot of drivers could be limping their way to the end of this race, just simply dependent on how much damage they have. It's funny. Talladega is a track that you can get away with some damage at, but it's also one of the most aerodynamically dependent tracks. Kind of funny how that plays out. Pace car is off and in, getting set for the restart. The 3 car of Nick Silver is control. He elects to start on the outside line. They cannot beat the 3 to the start-finish line with 37 laps to go. Green flag is back in the air.
Solid launch from Silver. Does he go down low? Yes, he does. Clears in front of Brandon Bowie. Leaves the top lane out to dry. No big checkup causing spins on the restart this time round. Small checkup, though, as it enters turns 1 and 2. See a couple of guys scrambling 3 wide around the outside line. But apart from that, nobody's made contact. Of course, that's a huge yet on that one.
So far, as the number 23 machine of Matthew Mara leads the top side, but they are not going to find help from Logitech Altis. 3 wide into turn number 3 as the 99 and the 57 break to the very outside. No drafting help for Mara and for Carr in the middle.
And the fact is, nobody wants to help them out anyway, because that means they're sacrificing their own run that they've gotten by following the Logitech Altis Esports guys. You can get freight train anywhere here. Bottom, middle, top, it doesn't matter. Look at the 53 car trying to slot up and trying to sidetrack Seth Merchant back. That didn't quite work out, though, so well for Nick Cohen. He had to tuck back in line, nearly caused yet another wreck by clipping Seth the Merchant.
And now there's still a little bit of 3 wide with Carr and Miller on the outside. It's starting to stack up in the middle. Look out. From Cohen on back, it got awfully dicey with Agno Phillips, number 94 machine. He's able to hang on. The 26 up top, 3 wide. It looks like we may have gotten away with that one, but it was getting awfully messy back there. And how about Andrew Freenosh, Nolan? Have not talked much about him and how dominant he was in the open round of these playoffs. A race winner at Darlington and Richmond. Should have been a race winner at Bristol, most likely. Comes into this one in a very comfortable position. Some 26 points to the good. And he's racing like a driver who's got a healthy cushion. Just kind of riding around right now. Hasn't made a ton of noise yet.
Again, the key words on that one is so far. There's still 35 laps to go, and we know how finishes usually play out at Talladega when you're in a big field like this one. Big stack up on the inside line there. Corner it back. Might send Lariah around as he scrambles to the middle line. They manage to recover it, though, and that leaves room for the top line. Start pushing their way up to the front. They survive the checkup in the background, but it's Nick Cohen to go to the race lead.
And what a push from Agno Phillip. New race leader is Nick Cohen. He takes the top position. Phillip slides down for second. What a dynamic duo between the 53 and the 94 to go to the top of the board. Now, the question is, how long does it last? Does Silver stay in line, or does he want to be a part of the move up top? Because here comes Freenosh now, pushed by that 15 car of Rhett McBride. They're losing a little bit of steam and coordination. They're 3 wide on the outside with Sean Casto, who lost and was eliminated for the playoffs in a tiebreaker at the end of the round of 16. He tucks back in line 2 wide, but Freenosh has seen enough, and he abandons ship. Dives down to the bottom. The outside just out of coordination right now, and that is not how you're going to get a run.
We saw Zachary Carr also abandoned the outside line in favor of the low side as well. That leaves it about 2 cars now that are lined up as Jeremy Wymaster tucks it in. So it's going to be Rhett McBride now, Matthew Mara. The only 2 cars lead the charge at the outside line, and they're losing ground fast. They lost all the support they might have had with Freenosh. With as powerful of a driver Freenosh can be, and we're talking 4-time defending champion now. He's a guy who you need to be able to, take what he does with stride. You follow him, you could find yourself in good line, and when he goes to the bottom, everybody else seemed to get the message and they wanted to go down too.
And we are, of course, this is at the point inside of the field window where we probably would have been talking about pit stops. If this race had stayed green, right, this would have been it to the end, and you would have been surefire to make it from this point to the end. Instead, well, we really don't know. Some drivers have been out there for 12 laps. Others have been out there for 7. And there are 32 laps to go in this race. I mean, I still think it is a hard-pressed number for these drivers to save. The question is, well, if you get a yellow, you can save fuel under a caution, but at that point, why not just top off, right? And give yourself a little bit extra for overtime if necessary. 3 attempts at a green and white checkered finish are available to us if we need it later on this afternoon. So I think mostly everybody just in the same boat here, riding around, trying to save some time, but Nolan, we can definitely see there's more urgency than the first half of the race.
I can agree with that one in all honesty. I mean, you realize now there's not a lot of time left to go at all. You're in that last third of the race. You need to start making these moves to slowly pick your way up through the order. You want to have a shot at going for this race win. I agree with you as well. If another caution comes out, come on down, top it up one more time. Make sure you have enough for overtime. We've seen it time and time again in the past, how drivers will have just enough to run to the end of the race, but then they will get screwed by that green-white checker that forces them to come down pit road. And at a track like Talladega, you just cannot make all that time up in just 2 laps. You can at some places. This is not one of them.
And how about Cohan leading this race? Of course, big names towards the front of the field. Agno Phillip is there. He came into tonight a good bit above the cut line. I believe it was 20. Actually, that was to the last round. Agno Phillip comes into this one in a decent enough position. I think 24 or 21 points maybe or so. Somewhere in that range to the good. Nick Silver's riding in 3rd position. Silver comes into this one a very similar spot, only 1 point behind Phillip in the standings. And Brandon DeBuey comes into this one as the first driver out. Remember, he was 4 points behind Matt Danson, who is looking like he'll finish this race no better than 39th position in scoring 1 singular point. So bad night for Danson, a good night for Bowie thus far, and opportunities for drivers to capitalize on the misfortunes of others. I think Bowie really highlights that.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, Brandon Bowie doing such a good job of trying to keep out of the fireworks so far that have been taking place so far all throughout this race. He's not quite out of the woods yet. He is still running in 4th place. That is more than further up enough that he'll be able to make a charge for the race win potentially if he really wants to, and if he get a couple of guys to work with him. I think he might be able to as well. If he can link up with Brandon Six right in behind him here, that might prove useful for Brandon Bowie to try to go to the front.
I was just listening into some of the driver radio there. They're kind of talking strategy, talking shop on the outside and talking about sticking with drivers, guys working with damage. Saw a little bit of a flare-up. Cars go to the outside. There was 4 of them there. But it looks like they're all going to maintain their positioning. No concerns And more lap traffic getting lapped. That's the 24. Grant Davis, he will fall back off of the lead lap with that significant back end damage. Davis not one of the drivers in the playoffs here at this portion of the postseason. But everybody's back in a big group. So again, it can kind of pop out of nowhere. Dylan Jones, the latest driver who wants to get something cooking. You can see Kamer's up there. Morano's up there as well, a little bit further back in the field. But up front, I think the 20 car might have something brewing here. Dylan Jones pushed by Casto. And Dominic Howe just kind of reaping the rewards. Third car in line up top. They made a big run. But again, you need numbers. And so far, nobody wants to go with them. And I just think it's going to be a challenge if it's just those three.
The fact that they managed to work up 10 cars, though, out of just through 3 and 4 is impressive in of itself. And they're still due battle up there with these guys up in the top 5. Dominic Howe, though, is going to abandon the effort, leaving Sean Casto and Dylan Jones to their own devices. Coming back down through the order. You can see a top 2 tandem starting to break away from the main field a little bit. Look at Agnew Phillip trying to pull apart from Nick Owen. That's a bit of a surprise, in all honesty. I didn't expect to see, just 2 drivers starting to form a smaller gap over the rest of the field behind them. It's not going to last, but hey, I mean, power for trying.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well go for it, right? We talked about some drivers being content with maintaining track position and not wanting to take those risks. Dylan Jones is not a guy who cares about risks, right? He's a driver who's not in the championship, who is here to race for checkered flags, and that's really all he cares about at this point. So I'm not at all surprised that he's the guy to go to the outside and to want to try this, right, to mix it up. And just want to be into the conversation as well. I mean, Dylan Jones is making his 144th career RSR start here this afternoon. He's 5th on the all-time wins list with 16. If there's going to be a guy digging to make some moves, it's going to be him. But, I mean, the Altus duo of Cozy and Merchant, remember how they were kind of out of the conversation early? And then after the green flag cycle, the pit stops, they were in front. Well, the yellow and the reset really hurt them. They got marred back in traffic a little bit, but they are coming back right now. It's again Cozy being pushed by DeMerchant, and they are making it look easy right now. Look at the speed difference up front. Wow. 196 is their slowest speed in the center of the corner, and as they lock bumpers, DeMerchant almost wrecked it though.
Why would you abandon the outside line if it's headed up by your own teammate and you're going for the lead? DeMerchant, what are you doing? Talk about playing spoiler and sabotaging almost your own teammate there. And he was pushing Michael Cozy Jr. to the front, and they would have gotten that if he hadn't gone down to the inside like that.
The only thing I can think of is that it had to have been blinking red on the dash, but he's pushing him again now, so I don't think you'd be able to get back on the bumper this quickly. It didn't look like, he slipped, right? Typically, if you kind of slip off of somebody's bumper, it's a big move. It looks a little bit, dicey, and I just didn't see that out of the 57, but he pulled away right as they were about to clear. And, it did kill all the momentum. But listen, when you got 2 insanely talented drivers like that leading the line, look at the confidence it instills. That outside line has more support now than they've had for much of this night, and I'm willing to bet it's because they see the guys that are leading it and have faith. Listen, these are good guys to follow.
Not to mention, look who's also up there with him, third in line. Andrew Freenosh, another driver who instills a lot of confidence in the field, and people tend to follow his decisions at tracks like these. He's also working right up there with them, trying to almost give a push and push the pusher here in the 57 car.
Here's the onboard look with Freenosh. You can see he feathered the throttle right before he get it onto the bumper to DeMerchant. DeMerchant has that back end damage, so Andrew Freenosh needs to be extra careful on where he puts the nose of his Ford Mustang. They get another big run down the back straightaway, but it's going to be the challenge. Remember, on the outside, you're going up the banking. So your advantage is going to die off a little bit, but watch for the run as they come into turn 4. DeMerchant pushing hard on the back bumper of Michael Cozy Jr. Cohan tries to get a shove from Agnew Phillip, but it is too little too late. And Cozy to the race lead with 22 laps to go.
What a charge from the Logitech GLDS Esports crew, and it's not finished yet. Look at Cohen looking to the outside line. It looks like he wants to try to almost retake that race lead. I kind of checked up the inside line when these top two duck back in, because obviously that pulls up the entire inside line just a little bit more. Then you have to kind of tag the brakes just a touch when you actually reach the back bumper, unless you want to go for the move. And they elected not to go forward. So Andrew Freenosh still leading up that outside train. He is now being pushed around by the 0-3 machine of Marius Lischinski. I've also got William Schmidt in that grouping. Further down, I can also see Bradley Burke trying to join the party on the outside line as well, in that white and green number 95. But so far, without the help of the Logitech GLDS Esports guys headed up the charge, they're not making nearly as much progress as I think they might like.
And you can see there, I mean, the confidence is gone, right? And it goes to show you that more drivers seemingly want to go to the outside when the Altus cars are up there, that want to go to the outside when the three-time defending Cup Series champion Freenosh is up there. I mean, there's just not as many willing participants. And give credit to Lischinski. I mean, he is pushing that 88 for everything he's got. But I wonder if Andrew really wants the 03 to be pushing him that aggressively. It is relentless bump drafting on the outside right now, and one of these bumps could make it all go wrong. Look how out of control Freenosh is as we have pit stops.
So maybe they couldn't make it to the end of the race. It looks like a train of 5 coming down the pit road, headed up by Nick Silver. You've also got Bowie, Six, Casto, and Matthew Mara all coming in. They might not be as safe as we think, as Matthew Mara might have overshot the box. Looks like he just slowed it down in time. But goodness gracious, pit stops with 20 to go. It's on.
So big cycle for pit service. I said maybe somebody could do it saving, but clearly they feel like it's too far. And if that group came down, gotta wonder, does that mean everybody else is going to be coming down to the pit lane as well? But it's a smaller group, some big names, Bowie, Silver, playoff drivers, some notable ones. Let's see if anybody else wants to follow them down to the pit lane. The concern I would have, being those cars who just pitted on, is you only have 4 of you, right? I think you're going to lose time, because this lead pack, as kind of discombobulated as they are, there's no way I see that 4-car pack being able to outpace this lead pack, and I feel like that they're just going to lose time here.
But they're not going to be able to outpace the 4-car pack. I think they're hoping that everybody else behind them is in the same boat, so they can link up with themselves, push each other as hard as they can go, wait for everybody else to slowly trickle in one by one as the main pack slowly but surely loses its momentum. But it's still a question mark if anybody else in this leading field has yet to come on down for a final pit stop as well. So far, second lap since that now, none of the other leaders are coming down yet.
Cars who pitted are about 35 seconds off of the race leaders. That's a good number. Because, of course, having just pitted, you don't need to fill it all the way up with fuel, right? So they only spent about 6 seconds in the box. I would expect anybody else to pit to do the same thing. You do not need to spend more than 5 to 6 seconds. You're really only looking for a splash to bridge the gap of the dozen or so laps that you're short. Maybe an extra gallon or two to give you enough for overtime so you can protect track position. But other than that, pit stops are primarily for fuel. Another trip by, though, in which the race leaders don't think about pinning. Freenosh up top, Lischinski up top. That maintains the same, but everybody else riding in line. This lead pack goes to about, I would say, it kind of trickles all the way down to 24th when you think about it, but most of the cars are running inside of the top 15.
Surprised that Freenosh hasn't tried to get down low yet. He's still working that top line with Marius Lischinski and maybe hoping that they can maintain on some ground. And I mean, props to them. They've actually haven't lost as much as I thought they might have by now. That 2-car train, they're using the side draft here to make it work. They're kind of dragging that train back, making them match their speed on the outside line. And that's what's keeping them up here in the top 10. So for a 2-car train, they're actually doing rather well, despite not being able to make up any time. If it's like that, it takes all you have just to not lose any ground.
I'll say it again, right? Said it once, say it 100 times at Talladega. It is all about risk versus reward. That time by, we were inside of 16 laps to go in this SimSeats 250, the middle race in the round of 12 on these 2021 playoffs. And a couple of spoilers up front, trying to steal the show. Two-time RSR winner Seth the Merchant in the mix, pushing his teammate Michael Cozy Jr. You got William Schmidt and Nick Cohan up there. How about those two names? And of course, a trio of playoff cars in Phillip, Freenosh, and Sheen, 5, 6, and 7 at the moment. Big question is going to be, again, can they do it on fuel? They would have to do 39 laps to make it happen. Some drivers already said they couldn't. But, Nolan, most of those cars who pitted with the drivers who did not top off. Remember how we had 6 drivers who didn't top off? Well, that's the cars who pitted, plus Leszczynski, who rides in 8th, plus Zach Carr, who rides in 17th position. Everybody else on the lead lap did top off. And that's a 5-lap difference on fuel. That's the difference between having to go, 38, 39 laps and having to go 44. So I wonder if the cars who can't make it are only going to be the ones who didn't top off. And man, would that be a tough pill to swallow if it comes down to not making a call like that.
It'll be dicey for sure to see who can make it to the end as they're going 3 wide once again. Dominic Howe getting muscled out by Dylan Jones into the middle lane as they passed up Kyle Kamer on the inside line. Got a little bit hairy with lap traffic. They tried to pass despite the lap car being down on the aprons. That's kind of forced a couple of more drivers up the outside lane. There's a pass below the yellow line. Look at Dylan Jones banging doors with Jeremy Miller down the back straightaway.
Yeah, that seems strange, and Jeremy Miller's going to pull down in line after the 20 car went low and just kind of drove around the 27 machine. They touched, and that kind of came out of nowhere now as we get side by side in the battle for the race lead. Freenosh still pushed by Leszczynski, but Trey Browning's in the mix as well, and they seem to have some momentum.
And that third car is what's really helping him out here at the moment. Trey Browning doing a good job to work his way up there. So looks like Freenosh will go to the race lead. He's just got to clear down the back straight, and with the momentum he can get from the outside line, I think he's going to do it. The question is, does he take Leszczynski with him? Does he abandon him? He ditches him from the outside line.
Leaves him hanging. Leszczynski had stuck with him for so long on the outside of the racetrack, and just like that, the second that Freenosh was clear to the inside, he pulled down. And how about at the end of lap number 82 of 94, new race leader Andrew Freenosh. What a drive. This is a guy, Nolan, who just turns it up when he wants to. He was putt-putting around in the 20s until this run, and then just casually said, you know what? I think it's time to go up front, and just makes it happen. It's not going to be a walk in the park. Leszczynski may feel scored here. He is going to get a push from Trey Browning. Can the 03 car go to the race lead? He's got daylight in 4, but that door closes very quickly, but Browning's going to give him a shove off of 4. Could Leszczynski go to the race lead?
How about that? Leszczynski's abandoned by Freenosh, and he says, all right, I'll play him my way. I'm going to go to the race lead anyway. And that puts Freenosh right back where he started in 3rd place. Leszczynski goes to the lead, and this time he decided to be a good sport and take Trey Browning with him.
Well, funny how that works, right? You could have brought the 03 car with you. You didn't. Now you end up 3rd in line. Browning stayed loyal to the 03 machine there, and he has pushed Mariusz Leszczynski to the race lead. What an opportunity this could be for the 03 car up front, the Chevrolet, to get the job done. It is Chevy, Toyota, and Ford, 1, 2, and 3. All the manufacturers represented in the top 3, this time by 10 laps to go from Talladega Superspeedway. It's a lead pack that's 24 cars long, but I'd argue probably 16 cars strong in the mix. And are those leaders too far out, Nolan? I'd be concerned at that advantage unless those guys behind them are dropping because they're saving. I'd be worried about getting that far out in front because when they draft up to you, it is going to be a heck of a run.
They were half a second slower than this top two, and it's a half second back between Freenage and Brownie. And Brownie can no longer close up Leszczynski because of the air bubble that he's struggling with. Can't even get within a quarter of a second. Tell you what, the 18 DO3, they're in big trouble at the moment because here comes Freenage.
He's got the run and he has the push. Now, Cozy and DeMerchant have only really worked with each other tonight. They've just ended up in packs with other cars because they've realized, hey, those guys have got some speed and I want to join in on the fun. Do the 99 and the 57 work with Freenage? Or do they kind of leave him out to dry? I mean, I don't think they have any allegiance. Now that Trey Browning has started to slip off of the back, I mean, look at this very strange situation where Mariusz Leszczynski's got 0.6 of a second of a lead, and it's all on his own. I mean, it doesn't really make a ton of sense right now, but I just don't think it can last. But it's growing, 0.8 now.
I don't understand how Leszczynski is in a one-car breakaway right now.
He can't make it on fuel.
Way.
I know that because he's been out there for 35. Are the others saving, and that's why they're so slow?
They have to be. That's the only reason that this should be even feasibly possible. They're dropping a 179 in the middle of the straightaways. They are absolutely saving fuel right now. There's no question about it. I'm sorry. I don't care what kind of draft package you have in the modern world. You are not getting a one-car breakaway at Talladega.
The trucks are faster.
I'm putting down my headset as soon as that actually happens in the real world.
The trucks are faster than this pace, and look at this now. I mean, Browning and Freenage are saving, but look how easy it is to pass when they go full throttle. I mean, these guys are blowing the doors off of them. Look at Jeremy Miller. He'll cross to the inside, go 3 wide. Oh, and there's contact. Cohen's into the outside wall.
They save it, though. No caution. Cohen keeps it in there. That has killed the 53's run, though, and maybe his race as well. There's not another yellow flag to help him out. Getting testy for a brief second, so turns out Coach Jr. and DeMerchant, they end up right back where they've started, but they're going to keep working together here. Now the inside lane is completely disconjointed. They're going to breeze past Dylan Jones, and now they're setting up Jeremy Miller, tries to go to block, but it's not going to get there. Leszczynski is going to be under fire.
And Miller's got nowhere to go but push him. Oh, it almost turns Leszczynski. Here comes Cozy. Full throttle for the Logitech Giolta Chevrolets. That tells me they have hit their fuel number. They are happy to go to the end of this race, and those two may just leave the field. Burke's going to get pushed on the outside by Howe. Phillips there, and now Leszczynski heads to pit road. He pitted Nolan 5 laps earlier than these drivers did.
Jeremy Miller sideways, caution flag flies. Multiple drivers collected. It's the big one on the front straightaway after Jim Miller gets turned sideways. Several drivers slamming into pit road as a result of this one. The caution flag waves. It all started off with Jeremy Miller getting turned in the middle of the trioval with Agno Phillip trying to side draft.
And that got messy quickly. Let's take a look. And I was just going to make the point, Nolan. Leszczynski was pitting with 6 to go, but he'd only pitted 5 laps before those cars. So I thought maybe there was a chance that meant your leaders were going to be in a tricky spot. But it was just a weird situation where the 27 was low. Phillips on the outside, and I think he just comes down to side draft and accidentally gets into him.
And that's going to collect everybody else behind him as watch as cars just come sliding in. And it wasn't Jeremy Miller that caused that. It was Agnell Phillip being stopped sideways at the track. Nobody behind had even a chance to avoid as the 94 came sliding down the track. Everybody ran into each other. That was a good 8-9 cars that got torn up in that wreck on the front straight as a result. And what a mess. I mean, the iRacing pace cars suddenly getting a lot more of a face full of action I think they would have liked.
Yeah, and a lot of drivers were penalized for entering a closed pit simply because of the timing of that caution flag. Of course, they spun onto the pit lane as they were crashing. Not any fault of their own. But again, a lot of drivers involved. And of course, Agnew Phillip claiming responsibility for the incident is a big storyline. Simply because, you know, it's a playoff driver, giving up a lot of points. I'm just trying to see if any other playoff guys got involved. Rabel avoided it. McBride was involved. And Sam Nieto. As we look at the perspective from Washington, and you can see those red playoff spoilers up the road of McBride and Nieto end up in the fence as Washington parts the seas.
Sometimes you just got to slam on the brakes and hope you make it through. And you saw the safety car barely ducking through the melee as well as it scrambled to leave pit road. Wanted to get out there a little bit quicker than I think it might like on a traditional caution flag. So that caution, does that put us in a green-white checker territory, or will this be a natural green-white checker?
I think that we will have a regulation restart. The question is, you know, will we get 3 to go, or will we get 2 to go but in regulation? You know, we could have a natural green-white checker where it's 2 laps to go, but it won't go to overtime. I don't think this will put us to overtime.
So that should make it real interesting here. If it's a 3-lap dash, that gives them 1 lap to get up to speed and 2 to race with. On a green-white checkered, you've really only got that 1 lap to get yourself up to speed. And then you have only 1 lap to be able to actually properly duke it out for the win. But I mean, on Talladega, you only really need that 1 move. And the earliest I would say you can go for a move for the lead, at least if you're up here in the top 5 or the top 10, then I would say the earliest it would come is the entry to turn 3. But if you're already up there in 2nd or 3rd place, you got to go for it in the trioval.
And of course, there were drivers who came down to pit road that we know will be good to the end of the race. Freenos, Schmidt, Chambliss, McBride, and company. But a majority of the drivers will decide to stay out, hoping that they can get to the end, Nolan. And I suppose if you have enough fuel to stay out to get to the end of the race on an overtime attempt, then I'm assuming that means that you could have made it anyways, right? So I think that takes a little bit out of the drama, out of the what if, because, well, if you can make it with the restart attempt, then certainly you would have been able to make it as is.
Absolutely. It's going to be a question, I think, if we end up getting another caution and we get pushed into another green-white checker territory. I mean, because in that case, you have all these guys up front who are going to have a big question mark over their heads. We knew they were good to go with how hard they're pushing. They're good to go to the end of the race. Does that factor an overtime attempt?
It'll be interesting, and in pretty good iRacing fashion, and as well, the field really doesn't know entirely where they should be running. A little bit of dispute on this is my spot, that's your spot, and I love a little bit of drama, but it will be in regulation, and the number is going to be 3. It'll be a restart with 3 laps to go. Obviously, if we get a caution between the restart and the white, we will go to overtime, but this is scheduled distance in regulation. So, fuel still a question then for the drivers who stayed out, because you're actually going to use less fuel with this caution period to go the regulation finish distance that you would have under green. So, if we get multiple restart attempts into overtime, could be a question for anybody running 1st to 11th who haven't pitted in the last 35 laps. But because this is in regulation, Olin, I'm assuming everybody's good on fuel.
And that, of course, is great news if we're going to be on the lookout for a potential photo finish here. Of course, there have been a lot of those pictures floating around lately from the more official series on iRacing, from C-Fixed all the way up to A-Open. Photo finishes galore, and I'd reckon with a field as competitive as what we've been having here tonight, the potential with everybody good on fuel is wide open for another one.
Well, we said it too at the very start of the show, talking about some of the unique characteristics of Talladega and that start-finish line being several hundred feet further out of the center of the tri-oval. Could that be a difference maker here tonight? If you're a playoff driver, potential ticket through the Roval And into the round of 8 hangs in the balance. The pace car is down and in. It is a duo up front that coordinates the restart. Green flag is back in the air with 3 laps to go at Dega.
A flash from Dominic Howe checks up the outside line. They do not get going at all. The Logitech G Esports car is going to sit 1-2 as they tuck back in line. It's still all sort of disconjointed behind at the moment. Only got the top 5 formed up. 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. They're trying to duck into the line as well. But from there on back, it might only be a 9-car shot to the end of this race with 3 to go.
And can you do anything against the 99 and the 57? They are so good together. You would assume that it's going to be until the last second before DeMerchant dares to leave Cozy out to dry. So what can Burke do? What can Lariah do? You're going to need some numbers, I think, to counter that Chevrolet duo that leads this race, coming to 2 laps to go.
If you can get just 3 cars to pull to the outside line, that might be just enough to break on past. But they would have to make that move, I'd imagine, before the white flag lap. You want to be alongside by the time you take that white flag. If you wait for this one until you're coming around turn 4, you're not going to have the time to get around 2 cars tandeming on the bottom.
And you can see drivers further back wanting to get a second line to go away to Brandon DeBowie. The 6 car of Harris, the 1 of Sheen. They're thinking about it. But I wonder if they are too far back. There needs to be coordination from 3, 4, 5, and 6. If they want to do something, Seth DeMerchant is 100% pushing Michael Cozy Jr. as they come to take the white flag. This race is official. Here comes Burke to the outside.
And it's being shoved big time by Michael Lariah, but they split apart as they get into turn 1. And Burke ditches Lariah in favor of Dominic Howe on the inside line. They backed up to try to get the run, but they were not quite able to do so. So it's going to be all up to Brandon Burke now as Logitech Esports goes in favor of the top side.
It fell apart, and now it may be too late to pick up the pieces again. Cozy and DeMerchant are a mile ahead of the field as they tandem at turn 4. They'll play playoff spoiler tonight at Talladega. Cozy on the bottom. DeMerchant will hold the line. Now he'll look to the outside, side by side, and in a photo finish, Michael Cozy wins at Talladega.
Just barely eking out that win over Seth Merchant, who tried at the last possible second. If he had broke down at the start of the tri-oval, then maybe. We can only imagine what might have happened.
And they looked like they had hope when Bradley Burke came to the outside in turns 1 and 2, but they could not hold it together. And of course, what is the story? It's not the strength in numbers, Nolan. It is the strength in confidence in your teammate, the strength in the control, right? They had a game plan, and those 2 cars on their own were able to best 40 other drivers.
There is the replay of DeMerchant making that look to the outside, but just has not enough room, and that allows Cozy Jr. to take a race victory, and they are both going to burn it down on the front straightaway here as they spin across the start-finish line once again on their victory lap, and I have a feeling they're going to be having a lot of fun doing burnouts together in the infield.
Second straight week, a photo finish in the sim seats. RealSimRacing Cup Series tonight. It comes at Talladega, and it is a Logitech G Altus Esports 1, 2, 3 finish. Cozy on top as they celebrate on the front straightaway. Let's take a look top to bottom at your sim seats. Full race results tonight for the virtual Talladega Superspeedway. The win goes to Cozy again, 3/100ths of a second over Seth DeMerchant, with Burke, Howe, and Browning coming home inside of the top 5. And then a lot of playoff drivers getting a lot of critical points. Chris Rabel in 6th position, Adam de Blasio in 7th, Michael Lariah in 8th, and Liam Sheen in 9th are all going to be very happy with the result of this one as Matt Maher rounds out the top 10.
That puts William Schmidt down in 11th place. He was side by side with Mariusz Liszczynski for 12th place, with Brandon Billy in 13th. Nick Silver in 14th. That puts Brandon 6 in 15th place. Cody Harris down in P16 with Trevor Trago in 17th. Andrew Farinaj in 18th. The Disney Motorsports driver of Nick Cohen going to be wrapping it down in 19th place, with Jared Wymaster down in 20th.
Continuing on through, Sean Casto finishes 21st in this race ahead of Nick Mara, Zach Carr, Dylan Jones, and David Washington, your top 25. And then playoff drivers Rhett McBride and Sam Nieto come home in 26th and 27th. Lots of work to do at the Roval ahead of Chambliss, Kamer, and Kaczynski.
Now into cars that were laps down. You got Tom Moreno along with Eric de Blasio, who did not finish this race, but now in drivers that retired from the race session after that last big wreck. Jeremy Miller in 34th, Grant Davis in 35th. That puts Ross Cato 36th, Joe Yates 37th, Joseph Tyson 38th, with Matt Danson and Sean Kalos 39th and 40th, and Stanford and Major to round out the 42-car grid.
The look at the bottom at your SimSeats full race results since 2009. SimSeats has been designing and fabricating high-quality, made-in-the-USA driving simulators, including motion systems, complete turnkey iRacing packages, and custom fabrication. Their customer base includes all racers from the amateur to the pro ranks, and everyone on the SimSeats team is a weekend racer too. Their passion for racing drives them to build better sim racing equipment. Join SimSeats for the thrill of racing at any time, in any car, and on any track by visiting sim-seats.com to learn more. Well, let's head trackside into Talladega Superspeedway Victory Lane, where we are chatting with the driver of the number 99 Chevrolet, Michael Cozy Jr., your race winner tonight in the SimSeats 250. Cozy, congratulations on the win. Just tell us about that strategy with you and Seth all night, right? I mean, he had a really good grid position in this one, dropped to the back to get with you early, and it seemed like from that point on, you guys didn't get more than 5 feet away from each other. Maybe he's having fun, Nolan, talking to the stream. So we'll see if we can get Cozy in just a minute. Of course, live streaming all of the action. And I'm sure everybody enjoyed that dominant performance from Cozy on his live stream on Twitch. His race win here this afternoon. A big story, Nolan, because we talked about spoilers. We've seen Seth the Merchant get a race win in a previous plate race at Daytona. Remember, that one was one where Logitech worked very well together. And this time it's the opposite result, right? Instead of a DeMerchant Cozy 1-2, it's a Cozy DeMerchant 1-2, kind of balancing things out, I would say.
I'd certainly say so. I mean, you managed to balance things out just nicely, and they have shown that they're a team that is able to work together so well on the super speedways. But you saw even in that last lap there how Seth DeBurge was able to just shove Michael Cozy Jr., pretty much locking bumpers with him the entire way around the track. Not a very easy thing to do at all with this draft package where you have that air bubble that is constantly trying to force your bumpers apart. It just shows that they know exactly what to do with those machines.
So while Michael Cozy Jr. Gets ready to chat, Nolan, I'll hand things off to you. It's his teammate, Seth DeMerchant, who comes home second tonight. Let's see if you can dial up the driver of the 57.
So we'll see if we can get in touch here with Seth DeMerchant. The 57 car coming on home. You were the one that pushed Michael Cozy Jr. to the win. You're trying to make that pass right at the last second. Maybe about another 200 feet back, you might have gotten him.
Yeah, we worked really good together all race again, and I think people kind of figured out what we had done at Daytona, and it wasn't nearly as easy for us to get to the front and lead the line. I think Agnell had it really figured out, like what to do, and like the tandem, and we weren't the only ones tandeming this time. So just that whole last run, trying to save just enough gas to where we would have enough laps to then be able to tandem and keep the lead when we need to, but not be so slow that we were buried in the pack. Because if you had no help on the top, it was pretty much impossible to do anything like what happened to us early in the race. The first fuel run, me and Cozy were trying really hard to get to the lead, but there's nothing we could do, even though we had like 10 cars behind us. So just lucky that we were able to play the strategy right under the green flag stops to get that positioning back. get the lead, and then just save enough fuel but run a fast enough pace to be there when it mattered after the last caution.
You found yourself, of course, at the front, but before that, you were actually running, kind of further towards the back of the main train in that opening stint until the calamity of pit stops. And we saw a lot of drivers were really struggling with the pit stops today. What do you think it is about this pit road that just made it such a calamity fest down there today?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think a lot of last-second decisions were made to pit with the group that we were in, and people didn't expect it. And we just went in there, and I think some people got overwhelmed. And got into each other, but yeah.
And then, of course, you look to yourself, and I imagine for you guys, you were working with each other all race long. Was there ever a plan to try to maybe see if you could link up with more of the guys with Logitech GLDC Esports crew throughout the race?
Yeah, off the first green flag stop, we were trying to get a group of 5 of us together, but it didn't work out, and we came out 2 separated. So unfortunately, we were never able to get with Matt and a few of the guys that we were working with, but me and Cozy were able to still do it. So I don't know. It helps if you get all those cars together, like we were trying to, but we qualified too far apart, and just I don't know, just the way this package is, it's hard. Like it's hard to do anything if you're not at the front. So I don't know, it just made it harder to link up.
Now, I know what you mean. It's not a package that necessarily works as well in 1 or 2 car lines, but you made it work tonight, and of course that does mean that you should have a good run, hopefully coming on over into the Charlotte Roval as well. Well, Seth, a pleasure as always being able to talk to you up here in the booth. Before I let you go, anybody you'd like to shout out for that number 57 Chevrolet?
Yeah, just all of our partners of Logitech G, Racetech Cube Controls, VRS for being on the car. And just Cozy, Matt, Danson, everybody who runs the league. It's a lot of fun, and yeah.
Thank you, Seth, for taking the time out of your night to come on up here and join us in the booth. Congratulations on a P2 finish and a Logitech 1-2. We'll see you next week at the Roval.
Thank you, guys.
So that was your P2 finisher. Seth DeBurcham bringing it home as the second driver in a Logitech G Altus Esports 1-2 finish. Still no sign of our third place finisher, went 29th and finished up on the 3rd position. So Evan, I'll see if I can maybe toss it back to you, and maybe we'll see if we can get another hold of Michael Cozy Jr.
Let's give him a call and dial up the driver of the number 99 Chevrolet. Your race winner in the SimSeats 250 is Michael Cozy Jr. tonight at the virtual Talladega Super Speedway. Cozy, congratulations on the win.
Hey, thank you. Sorry I missed out on the first time. I had to take a trip to the bathroom. That was a long one.
You can get the fire suit from Shield House, and then you don't have to get out of the chair next time. Just tell us about this one. I mean, Seth started up front and very quickly dropped the back to you, and it seemed like from that point on, you guys didn't get much more than maybe 5 feet away from each other for the rest of the night. I mean, obviously, it worked very well for you guys at Daytona, and Seth was just telling us that guys had kind of caught on to the strategy. It was a little bit more difficult for you guys to do it, but we're still able to work together in the end, it seemed.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We, yeah, I think I caught the wind wrong a little bit on my qualifying lap. I had to come from a little deeper than usual, but yeah, me and Seth, we've been working really good together lately, and yeah, it was a little harder off the bat, but we started, we figured some things out, and just how the race played out, we had a really good handle on it, and really all credit to him, man. It's super cool to win a damn RSR race, man. This is one of the, like I said a while back, one of the few leagues, I ran a lot, I did a lot of races and never won. So I'm glad I'm, check one off and get us one. But like I said, all credit to Seth, man. That was all him, man. He killed it all day. We were working together real good, and he's a hell of a pusher. And I was glad to get us another one too there for Logitech G Altus, baby.
Yeah, it was the other way around, right, at Daytona. He ends up getting the race win. Was it a plan to get it for you tonight, or was he gunning for you just as much as any other race?
Yeah, I think he probably took it a little easier on me this time. He probably could have. I know he's pushing water there coming to the line, but yeah, I was glad we got there to the line. I didn't know how hard he's gonna push me, but yeah, it worked out really good, man. It's so cool to win.
We'll like to see you at RSR Victory Lane. I know a long time coming for certain. There's a couple of races left. We get to see you back here on a Monday night, or?
I certainly hope so. Is Martinsville still on the schedule? I'd like to come and run some Martinsville if it is.
It is. It was quite a show last year, I'll tell you that.
Oh, man, I might have to make a trip for that. That sounds like a good time.
That'll be coming up at the end of the round of 8. We got you here in victory lane. Before we let you go, anybody else you want to say hi to?
Yeah, absolutely. I just got to thank my teammate again, Seth. Matt had some problems, unfortunately, early on, but just a shout out to everybody we were working with. And of course, the sponsors, Logitech G, Race Tech, Cube Controls, VRS, everybody makes it happen. It all just proud to get another really good result, man, get another win, and a good showing for the team today. And of course, appreciate everybody at RSR and you guys for having us. It was an absolute pleasure.
We appreciate having you guys here racing with us. It's always a good show when you got the best of the best going at it, Cozy. Congratulations on the win. Good to chat with you. Say hi to the stream. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you very much.
The race winner tonight for the virtual Talladega Super Speedway, Michael Cozy Jr. is a race winner in the RealSimRacing Cup Series in 2021. And immediately, Nolan, I look to my point standings, right? That's the big question mark is, did you survive Talladega, right? Did you get through this one, or did you set yourself up for a headache going into the Charlotte Roval next week? Well, just looking at the points, there is a 3-way tie for the transfer. I mean, you thought it was tricky last time. Look at it here. Bowie in 7th, Phillip in 8th, and Rabel in 9th are all tied with 3,037 points. Now, Agnew Phillips, the big loser in all of this after his night spoils and he finishes 33rd. He's the one that trickles well down the running order after Agnew Phillips came into tonight 4th in the points. So that's a big drop for him. But McBride drops 4 positions, Nolan. He falls out. Danson falls out. And it opens the door for guys like Rabel, like Lariah, to find themselves on the right side of the cut line headed into Charlotte. But if you thought that there was drama with the McBride and Casto tiebreaker, I mean, just look at that red cut line as we get set for a trip to the Roval.
The first thing I think of when I take a look at that is what might happen on track at the Roval. It's one of those tracks where dive bombs are certainly possible, although they might not end out as pretty as you might like, as Jimmy Johnson, Martin Truex Jr. can definitely attest to back in 2018. I imagine it'll be an entertaining race, to say the very least. And I was telling you before, I was a bit disappointed I was going to be missing that one. I'm even more disappointed now. Why does these things always have to happen when I'm not going to be around?
You'll just have to pull it up, right, on a phone or something, and nobody will notice at the dinner table, just to keep tabs on it. And, of course, after that race, we'll know, as we take another step towards the battle for the championship, who will make it to the round of 8, and then we'll start thinking Texas, Kansas, and Martinsville, the next challenge. But it is the Charlotte Roval next week that closes out the round of 12. You are not going to want to miss that one. Andrew Freenosh is the defending race winner in that one. But we talked about the storylines. Danson's going to need a win, it seems. He finds himself on the wrong side of the cut now after this race. Danson, just by my quick math, at 3,018 is 19 below the cut. So not mathematically needed a win, but likely needs one. And then you got Liam Sheen, who is the safest on points, but could play spoiler to Danson in that one. So there are lots of stories going into the race next Monday, and we certainly hope that you tune in and join us for that one. But until next time, that is it for us here tonight from the virtual Talladega Super Speedway. So on behalf of our entire team at RaceSpot TV, at RealSimRacing, on behalf of our partners at SimSeats. For your broadcast team tonight, our producer, as always, has been Hugo Luis, for Nolan Rempel, and myself, Evan Pasoko. I want to thank you all for tuning in, and congratulations to Michael Cozy Jr., one of the best-known figures on the service, and he is finally a race winner in the SimSeats RealSimRacing Cup Series. We are back next Monday night. That is Monday, October the 11th, for the virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway Roval. That race and every race of the 2021 SimSeats RealSimRacing Cup Series playoffs can be found exclusively here on RaceSpot TV. Until next time, good night from Talladega, where Cozy is a playoff spoiler.